But the senator, while indoctrinated, could not explain his toxicity.
Hello and welcome to the People's Republic of Bageria. I am your El Presidente for life, Alison, and with me today is my Minister of Subjugation and Puppers, Brian Martinez. On March 18th, 2020, the governments of the United States and Canada announced a full closure of the Canadian-US border to non-essential travel. With the closure of the US-Canada border, the Western world is now in total lockdown. This comes after the stock market has seen record losses over the last 4 weeks, sparked by the COVID-19 pandemic crisis and worsened by the price war between Saudi Arabia and Russia over oil. We are in unprecedented times, unless you want to count the fall of the Bronze Age, but let's not go there yet. These are uncertain times, and uncertain times are scary times. But there is one thing I know: human beings are resilient. We reinvent ourselves and become whatever is needed to overcome a crisis. We did it when Africa turned into a dust bowl. We did it when the glaciers advanced. We did it when Ungrit burned and when Rome fell. The question then becomes how? How do we change? What sparks it? What guides it? That's the question I've always asked, and I invite you to ask it along with me during these very interesting times. All right. So this particular did you actually change the title from
What?
separatist states, or did you change the title from
To
startup states to
Bageria? Yeah.
yeah, the
Yeah.
People's Republic of Bageria, so we could
Yes.
declare our independence from the gender orthodoxy and but like at this point in time declaring your independence from the gender orthodoxy means accepting differences between men and women.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And realizing that there might be, some biological issues that are different, and that's okay because difference is diversity, and diversity isn't bad, even when it's, two genders. Um, but yeah, so I wanted to bring up something that a patron brought to my attention. It was from the Tom Woods show. It was one of their episodes on startup societies, and those are societies that are separate from the general mainstream society. They occupy their own little territory, and they run by separate rules, usually separate economic rules. So there's an economic regulation that they don't have to abide by, or some other aspect of the greater country's legal system that they are exempt from. And sometimes these little startup societies will have their own visas and their own paperwork for who is allowed in it and who can contribute to it. And it was a really interesting discussion, and it got me thinking about the nature of what creates a separate society, what maintains a separate society, and how to create one. Or sorry, how to look at these changes in terms of creating almost like a separate identity. And so I thought this would be interesting to bring to your attention because of the recent situation that we find ourselves in, and also because I think that, and I've said this a lot on the Honey Badger Radio's channel, I think that the narrative that our general society operates under for the genders, between the two genders, is unworkable long term. So the narrative that I'm talking about is, of course, the belief or and this is a decision. It's never been scientifically proven. So this was decided at Seneca Falls that men oppress women, and that women would use their control over defining the relationship between the genders because women are primary caretakers of young children. They present our first model of belonging, of social belonging. So we have our first relationship with another human being is with our mothers. So they have this powerful influence on how we define ourselves. Girls are defined as having a closer biological relationship to their mothers. Boys are often defined by being feeling not as close in terms of their identity and having to differentiate themselves. And all of that is really founded on a relationship with your mother universally throughout the entire throughout the entire mammalian order. This is true. Other young of other mammals look to their mothers to discover what is safe, what's dangerous, where they belong, who are members of their own kind, and it's the same with humans. So mothers have this powerful effect on how gender is defined. And recent studies have shown that it is actually mothers who are most likely enforcing the differences between how boys and girls relate to their greater world. And the way that they do that is they accept the emotional expression of girls. So girls can express anger, they can express sadness, they can express joy and happiness, but boys are not allowed to express the full range of emotions. Their mothers actually stigmatize that. So right from the beginning, the mothers are establishing gender roles in their children. And the study, which cautioned not to make any any assumptions, but I'm sure that if they found the reverse, we would be assuming everywhere. Found that fathers actually don't reinforce this. They treat sons and daughters very similarly. So it is really mothers who are enforcing the difference between the gender roles between boys and girls, and then as they grow up, men and women. So at Seneca Falls, feminists basically decided to use that power to enforce a particular construct of gender, which is that men oppress women. Men oppress the women who give them their very identity, or provide the foundation of their very identity by raising them. It's
Mm-hmm.
ridiculous. But it was decided because they felt that it would be useful to them politically. And we have been laboring under this narrative for the last how many generations? Like 4 or 5 generations, however you want to count a generation. And in my opinion, that narrative is extremely destructive to society because it instills a basic level of misanthropy. Not just misandry, but misanthropy. Because not only are men suspect, not only do women have to hold men in a place of paranoia and suspect, like making them suspect of having ulterior negative emotions or motives towards women, but men hold each other in this kind of a negative attitude. And
Mm-hmm.
women do as well, because of course any woman who isn't part of the sisterhood, which is a constantly evolving set of norms and expected standards that nobody really can keep track of, any woman who doesn't conform to it is of course a patriarchal handmaiden who's selling out every other woman. So you've essentially constructed this narrative of suspicion and paranoia and disgust towards every other member of your society and every other human around the world. And personally, I don't know about you, and if you're listening here, personally, I think that narrative can only end in destruction, can only end in a situation where people stop taking care of each other, stop trusting each other. And there is so much that relies on people trusting each other, including a shared language, including a shared currency, or even not even a shared currency, a shared economic system, like a global system. If we don't trust each other, it doesn't exist. It evaporates. It disappears. And we are embracing wholesale a narrative of complete and utter mistrust towards one another. So I was thinking about all of these things and how, if you separate from that narrative, you're essentially creating your own separate state. Now, the name of this video is of course tongue in cheek, um, but it does sort of speak to that idea of almost like declaring yourself, okay, we're going to be separate from this, which ties into the startup societies. They've said, okay, these particular ideas we don't want to hold sway over us, so we're going to create our own little area where they don't hold any power, and we're going to see what happens. And that's sort of like
Mm-hmm.
the approach that I've taken in constructing the Badger Discord, for example, or the Badger community space, is that we're going to create a little space where that narrative holds no sway, where nobody believes that men oppress women, and see what happens, and see if that little startup community is a more effective producer of not just things, but of people who are healthy and productive themselves. If it produces people who if not happy, at least content and capable of becoming better and healing, and see what happens, and see if that actually becomes a much more successful system for people's mental health and people's sense of identity. Anyway, so that's sort of my preamble. I apologize for making
Okay.
it so long, But why don't we go and listen to the video? And also, once we're done listening to the video, I'm going to bring on one of our supporters, Tiny Giraffe, because she wants to talk about an idea that she's had about going forward, our economics going forward. So go ahead, Brian.
Okay. Well, so I gave this video a listen. I don't know if the things that I picked out would be the same things that you have picked out, but I wanted to, I guess, pick stuff that was would help kind of explain
Mm-hmm.
what the topic is about, and then and these are really long-winded statements and questions. So since this is just audio only, I may have to pause multiple times. I'm not really sure, so we'll
Just
see.
let it just play out, because I'm pretty sure that they don't. I don't think they'll do a copyright strike on us.
Yeah, I don't think so
Famous
either.
last
But
words, huh?
yeah, we'll
We'll
see.
see.
Startup society is simply defined as any form of small, innovative jurisdiction. So this can involve a lot of different things. This could include a very libertarian project. It could also include something a little bit more moderate, very common, which is a special economic zone, which is an area within a host nation that has different laws regarding taxation, regulations, and legal systems. There's also eco-villages, new city projects, even more egalitarian type projects like communes or kibbutzes. And the point of creating that term is to have that wide variety of projects that are simply experimenting. Because I come from a libertarian tradition originally, in a classical liberal tradition, but there's this widespread distrust of existing forms of traditional governance that's not limited just to libertarians. In fact, even before COVID-19 was putting even more distrust in our institutions, this election has illustrated only the inability of our existing institutions to address common day problems. So what our hope is that instead of trying to change an entire system, either by doing a communist utopia, or even Nozick's concept of a minarchist state, or Rothbard's example of anarcho-capitalism on a wide scale, it's best to try to start small and then scale from there and attract people who come there voluntarily.
All right, so that's like a brief
Yeah, that's a
explanation,
really
like an
good.
overview.
It sets up what they're talking about really well. So
You want
I'm
to?
supposed to. Yeah, go ahead.
Well, I was going to ask if you wanted to add anything to that, because I was because I was still trying to like get a grasp on what's being discussed here. I mean, I do understand what's going on. So you might, if you guys have any questions about this concept, or maybe you have more knowledge about this, send us a super chat. We appreciate it. It helps sort of validate the existence of the channel. Or even if you can't, but you absolutely have something crucial, you could tag at Honey Badger Radio in the comments. So
All right.
okay.
Yeah, please do send those super chats. And
Yeah.
yeah, okay. No, I thought that was a really good summation of what they're trying to get at, and what interested me about the concept. I liked some of the examples. Did you actually choose some of the examples to illustrate what they're talking
Yeah, I
about?
think that's another time code. Yes. I do
Okay,
have
let's
that
take
one,
a look.
but I want to play the next one in order. I think the examples come way later, and I didn't like label them. I just put down the times.
These disparate examples. Now, can you give me a couple of examples of real life startup societies?
Yeah, so here we go. Here we have some real examples.
And particularly if they happen to be quite different from one another?
Sure. And I just want to iterate before I do, I completely agree with your thought pattern. Yeah, there's a wide variety of different organizations. They all have different missions and values, but at the same time, they have the same methodology. And it's important for an organization like the Startup Society Foundation to share best practices and to share a network so people understand that they can work together and not repeat the same mistakes. But yeah, there's a whole wide variety. There's things like a Rengen Villages, which is an eco-village project that's being tried out in the Netherlands, led by James Ehrlich of UCLA. And that's very much focused on having self-sustainability and having governance through local politics and infrastructure that's renewable. But then you have projects that are done by the Free Private Cities organization run by Ted Escobar. And that's focused on hyper realization of private property rights and free markets. and very much focused on libertarianism. And then you have this mixture of this free market slash private public partnership model called the special economic zone. And there's 5,400 of these things in the world, and they're radically liberalizing the economy and creating enclaves of free markets. But they have strong partnerships with local governments. And big examples include Shenzhen, which was a series of fishing villages in the 1980s. But because it was designated a status that would allow foreign direct investment and free markets, it grew to one of the largest cities in the world within 30 years. It now has the same gross domestic product as Portugal, Vietnam, or Ireland. Another example that's very radical is the idea of a charter city or a free private city. And one example, approximately, is something called the Dubai International Financial Center. And that is a economic zone within Dubai. And despite it only being 300 acres, it accounts for 4% of the GDP of Dubai, which we found in our research, and 0.8% of its annual GDP growth. And you're wondering, how can this tiny patch of land account for such a large economy? And the reason is it has the most streamlined regulatory code in the world, some of the best taxes in the world, and most interestingly, it uses best practice legal codes. It basically treats a legal system as a product, very similar to what Rothbard talks about or what David Friedman talks about. It imports best practice legal codes from Wales and England, and even hires retired Welsh and English judges to adjudicate cases in Dubai. And we can create cases like that around the world. We can import or take best practice legal systems from private and non-state sources and use that to create these enclaves of freedom or experimentation and economic development around the world.
All right.
Yeah, that's interesting. I would wonder what the percentage of the people in these particular enclaves are male or female.
I was thinking about that too as I was listening. I know that libertarian-minded people tend to be male. And it's one of the problems that like libertarian-focused parties, and I don't necessarily mean the actual, like, for those of you guys who are Americans, I'm not talking about necessarily the Libertarian Party of the United States, because that's kind of a mixed bag. But people who have like libertarian-minded principles, like around free markets and small governments, etc., they tend to have problems growing because they can't attract women. They have problems attracting women to the set of principles, a set of beliefs. And so yeah, I can't say for sure, obviously, but I would suspect that there's way more men than women involved in startup societies in general, probably mostly men too, because it's kind of risky, right? You're going outside of the norm, the comfort zone, to try something new that does come with a lot of risk. So it's probably dominated by men as well. I got a super chat from the Real Cellaret for $5 Canadian. Says, I'm at work alone again. I'm glad there's a show to tune into. Well, thank you, the Real Cellaret. Sometimes I don't really mind being by myself, But anyway.
Well, sometimes it can become really exhausting.
Oh,
I
yeah.
also saw an although it's off topic, Justice for Men and Boys is uploading ICMI videos. Why do so many of them have audio issues? Is it on Justice for Men and Boys side? Well, I'm not quite sure what you mean by audio issues. I haven't actually listened to the end product, but there were some issues with audio at the ICMI.
Yeah.
Like the audio
we were stretched really thin in terms of staffing at the ICMI. Because we had well, go ahead, Alison.
Yeah, because I was unable to volunteer my time as a volunteer at the ICMI, volunteering for no money as a volunteer. I was unable to assist with anything as a volunteer for no money at the ICMI, for which I was not paid anything more to do, just so you know. And neither was my husband, who was also going to volunteer at the ICMI for no additional funds for working for volunteering at the ICMI, which we both would have volunteered at as volunteers. So because that happened, there was a big gap in some of the workload, and that may have resulted in having some audio issues. The secondary room, as far as I know, the audio ended up having to just be through the video cameras.
Yeah.
And in the primary room, I believe it did go through the board, but there were some
Mostly.
issues. Yeah, mostly.
Yeah, it was
So,
like most of it was
apologize for
fine.
that, but it was yeah, there's not
Well,
much I could do.
And also,
really.
and also Tom, who is the guy that normally records all of the presentations at all the ICMIs, who is also volunteering his time to sort of, do that, bring his equipment and everything. Normally, the ICMI takes place in one room with one speaker, and so there's one setup, and he has to manage one recording at a time because it's in the same room and it runs all day. But this time, we had two separate rooms, and they were not particularly, like, they weren't right next to each other. One was on one end of the hotel lobby, the other one was the other end of the hotel lobby, and Tom was the only person that knew how to use the equipment, and so he was running back and forth. And the way that the schedule was set up, and this is something we discussed in the aftermath, all the presentations started at the same time, which meant that Tom had to start a recording and check the cameras on one station and then make sure it was working, and then run over to the other station and do the same. And that means that it basically just opened up more margin for error, and there were some errors. So yeah, we dealt with it the best we could. We got most of the content. I think that there's very little that was lost in it, and considering all of the factors, I think we pulled it off. But yeah, so it's not Justice for Men in Boys End. It was something that happened on the ground floor when things were going on, and we had to adapt. So,
and also incidentally, the difficulty with a lot of this was why it took quite a bit of time for things to come out, because we had a lot of stuff, a lot of holes to fill.
yeah.
In the videos and the audios, and so we did the best we could and got the best outcome that we could get. Now, the other thing is that I hear that there was also flooding issues at the venue during the event as well. So that would have probably been another monkey wrench in the works. But yeah, I was the border was closed on me before it even became fashionable, before it even became cool. I was no longer allowed to travel before coronavirus did it to us all. But yeah, that's the situation with the videos. Like I said, we did the best we can. The volunteers put in heroic hours, despite illnesses and other things, and just the sheer amount of massaging everything needed to be able to be in a presentable state. All right, so anybody else?
No,
Well,
that's it.
I guess
I think we
that's
can
it.
keep going. But yeah,
Did you do the? Yeah. You did the super chat. Yeah,
I
please
did.
send those super chats in, guys. That helps us keep our channels. It helps give YouTube a reason to keep us around. So,
All right. So I will play the next sound bit, I guess. Here we go.
Come about.
So this is actually something that we talk about in our book. So the Startup Societies Foundation, we just released a book called Founding Startup Societies, a Step-by-Step Guide. And we go from the initial planning phases all the way to managing and developing the zone. But the point where the rubber really hits the road is when you have a team and hopefully some seed investment that works with a host government and secures a concession agreement. And that concession agreement is premised on certain policies that would make that zone attractive. And in the case of a lot of these projects, if it's an entrepreneur, also the ability to manage that zone privately as a company. And so what you do is you work with those governments, you create pre-feasibility studies, you create draft legislation or modify existing legislation, and then you negotiate with them to secure those policy reforms, and then also secure a land grant. But one way that we have found through our book and best practices to really hasten it is to create a competition to do that. because a lot of these projects, I think you've seen, if anyone's been paying attention to this space, is that it's really hard to get governmental partners. I mean, this is true with most things in the world. When you start working with them, they finagle the deal, they push it back and make it last long, and then it just dies or it isn't very exciting at the end. But what we recommend is instead of pushing on a string, we pull it, and we create a competition among multiple jurisdictions in the world to vie for the opportunity to host a startup society. So when an entrepreneur goes to a government, they say, well, this deal isn't really effective for us. We would prefer to go to this different country that's offering us a better deal. And using that process to make it a lot easier to secure a good jurisdiction.
All right. So that was basically like commentary on how to sort of get started, because of course government would become an obstacle.
Very rapidly.
Right. So yeah, absolutely.
But what's interesting is that when it comes to economic issues, of course they have to find governments who are willing to negotiate with them to create a different deal. But when we're talking about the relationship between the genders, and I apologize, my throat is just really dry, so I'm actually enjoying these sweets that a supporter, Bradley, sent me. So thank you for that, Bradley. You're helping keep my throat dry. But what's interesting to me is when we're talking about the narrative that feminists has put forward, that they're trying to create the subtext of society, they're trying to seize the center of the chessboard and make everybody sort of dance to their tune, to their beliefs about gender. We don't really need to negotiate with the government.
This
We
is
just need to
possibly a
create
more
Wait,
philosophical
Alison.
comment, but it
Wait,
dawned on me
wait.
that the
There's
virus made
Sorry.
society go
Somebody
from
sent
a
a super
toxic
chat,
masculinity narrative to a
playing out.
toxic humanity one.
Oh, I can't even hear
Keep
it.
that
No, you
5
can't.
feet distance,
I
please.
should probably change
Because I'm
that.
not. No. It's because we should probably change that. It's because I'm not sharing my audio, so you don't hear it when it starts playing. But I'll quickly read it again after you're done making your point. But you did get talked over by the Great Indoors super chat. So go ahead.
Well, my point essentially is this: when we're dealing with a narrative, we don't really need to negotiate with the government to exist. We just need to find people who are willing to cooperate and be together and support that narrative while they do so. Or not even support the narrative, because I mean, if I look at the socialization that's happening in Feed the Badger or the Badger Discord, I mean, the Badger community, we're not constantly like being, oh, feminism is bad. In fact, that's probably less than a tenth of a percent, or maybe even maybe a percent of what we talk about. We are actually just enjoying each other's company, but we're enjoying each other's company in a context where everybody in there disagrees with the feminist narrative that men oppress women. And that creates a completely different atmosphere and a completely different dynamic between people that, in my opinion, is a hell of a lot less toxic. And I've had people say that who have been part of the community, that it's a breath of fresh air, that they feel like they can speak, but it's very laid back. Like it's not constant trolling or constant trying to get a rise out of people. That can be sort of the other way that communities go when they oppose the feminist narrative, but rather it's people that actually genuinely care about each other. And I remember it sort of was brought home during last week. And did you put the link to the public square in our community Discord?
Yeah, it's there.
Yeah. So if you want to check out our public area, which is it's not the other areas are only available to patrons, but we have a public square area that we've made open to the public, so as sort of like a place where you can find support during this time of unprecedented social isolation. And if you want to go there, the link is in the low bar. But I remember going a couple days, or like maybe it was a week ago. No, it wouldn't have been a week ago because we started these on Thursday. So it was a couple days ago. And I noticed that there was someone who's sort of like stuck in just alone in one of the voice chats. So I popped into the voice chat and I was like, "Oh, how are you doing? Like, are you okay? Did you lose your way to the because we have several voice chats that are more popular." And I noticed that he was available to have access to them. So I said, well, why don't you come with me to the main voice chat, which is Direhawk's Den, and because I could see that there was a bunch of people and they were chatting in Direhawk's Den. So I brought him over to Direhawk's Den, and I said, guys, I noticed that this guy Toe, uh, I'll call him Tom. I noticed that Tom was just sort of alone in this other voice chat that maybe he got lost in. Could you guys give him like a bit of a welcome and take care of him? And the instant I brought in and said that, a couple of them were like, "Oh," like that sound that people, you know what I'm talking about, Brian?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
Yeah, I
that
know the
sound of
sound.
I found a lost kitten and I need to take care of it. And I was like thinking
Mm-hmm.
about that, and it's like that is sort of the attitude of the Discord. That we let people say what they want to say, but we're also very supportive. Or the people involved are very supportive. They go out of their way to try to support each other while having freedom of speech. So we don't censor each other. That's not how we create, like, I think a lot of the social justice has this belief that the way that you create compassion in people is to censor their speech and to control and police their speech rather than recognizing our shared humanity and and incentivizing or treating as very pro-social that kind of compassion. So I mean, these are shit posters.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, one day they'll be like, "Oh yeah, let's take care of this guy who feels lonely," and the next day they'll be like doing ridiculous, crazy memes, and it's great. It's like I look at it and it gives me such a sense of hope and camaraderie to see people who both respect each other's freedom of speech, but also respect each other and care for each other. And I think that that is something that could become very valuable in the near future as a community model, as more and more of our social interaction by necessity, and most likely this is going to be a permanent change just because of the nature of epidemics. Like the COVID-19 is not going to be the last one. So we may see a huge shift in society from large public gatherings, conventions, and lots of business travel to a shift to more online spaces, which may mean that creating an online space that produces productive people becomes very valuable, produces productive people that support each other, act with cooperation, give each other the permission to express and live out or describe or exposed to all kinds of ideas without limitation becomes a very valuable commodity. And so that's just what I wanted to say about that. And I think that that really speaks to what they're saying about how these startup communities, these startup societies, they compete and to be more productive. And I think they go on to say that, we're all living in what was once a startup society. Like the society that we live in was a startup society known as Christianity, which started up within its own context. And it was a very small group of people originally. I think Christian communities were quite small. And like the first one grew rather rapidly at like 3,000 people. But it started extremely small and it started within a greater context that was very hostile to it. And yet it
Mm-hmm.
managed, because it created this arrangement of people, it created a community that cooperated, that shared, and that supported each other. It became very successful. And it ended up being adopted by the very system that ostracized it, which I want to point out to people that not only do startup communities, not startup societies, not only do they compete to become more dominant, they sometimes get adopted by the very system that ostracized them because there's something about them that helps that system become more stable or more productive. And I don't know, I think that we might have something knocking around in our little community that is useful for making society more productive and more stable. I think that might be the case. So,
Mm-hmm.
anyway, so that's why I thought that there was a really significant relationship between what we're doing in High Badge Radio. Like, we're not really a YouTube channel. Brian does podcasts. I mean, primarily we started as a podcaster, and we've never stopped being a podcaster. We have like continuous podcast content from August of 2013 up to today. We've almost never missed a single week aside from like our Christmas vacation, what we still do call-in shows during. And so we started as a podcaster and we moved to YouTube. So we were first on as podcasters. We didn't start as YouTubers. And even on YouTube, when we started to create YouTube channels, I started to focus actually in 2014 on building a community of the people who supported the channel. And since then, I've focused more and more and more on being a community builder. So our YouTube channel is barely the tip of the iceberg when it comes to what Honey Badgeria is. I mean, if you're just listening to this as a podcast or looking at this as a YouTube channel, this is hardly a crumb. You're only getting a little crumb of HBR. The cake is in the community. It's in all of the interactions, all of the support that the people in the community are giving each other, all of the fun events that they put on, that people spontaneously put on in the community, like game nights, like Tony reading 50 Shades of Grey every Sunday. All of this stuff that we do together to create that sense of a shared purpose and a shared future. And I mean, I think it's really started to shine in the last couple weeks because it's gotten, well, understandably, the community has gotten busier. There's been more and more events being put on, and more meetups are happening in the voice chats. But it's like I can see how people who are nervous or scared or confused by the situation going on in the greater world are being given a sense of calm by having a place to go to. It's a virtual place. Now it's all of it has to be virtual because everybody has to practice social distancing. So, I mean, it's almost academic, the argument, oh, is this real friendship? Is this real companionship? Well, that's what we're going to get going forward, friends, because this COVID-19, I can't see how it won't spread as soon as the social isolating stops. So it's going to be months, if not potentially even longer. And after that, again, there's going to be probably significant restructuring in how we approach our interactions. So this could be our new normal going forward, much more virtual interaction. And I'm looking at this and it's like, I see the benefit that this is having for the people in it. I see them going onto voice chat and you can hear that they're nervous and then they start to sound less and less nervous or less and less afraid or less and less concerned, and they're just relaxing and laughing with their friends, and it feels so normal. I can't emphasize that enough. It just feels normal. I mean, I'm not the kind of person that usually like to have to listen to a bunch of people laughing in a room over, but I have to say it's growing on me as everything else gets more and more silent in the greater world, to just go into the voice chat, mute myself and just listen to people having fun, because it makes you realize that, first of all, maybe things aren't as bad as they seem. And second of all, it really is each other. Like, we are each other's greatest gift. Being together is really what matters. And so anyway, that's my description of the Discord and why I think that this talk of startup societies is relevant to what we're doing, because we are creating a startup society. In fact, watching this gave me a way of explaining what we're doing. We're creating a startup society based on the principles that men deserve compassion, too, that the men deserve recognition for their human rights, and that the relationship between men and women is not defined by one as oppression. And also, when you define the relationship between men and women as one of oppression, you create misery. You fire up the misery machine. And it's like, well, fine, you choose to live that way, and it's a choice. Like, you can choose. You can say to yourself, you know what, I don't think the genders are defined by oppression, and they won't be, because it's a choice. It always was a choice. It was the choice to make that the definition, and it's a choice to continue to believe that it is so. And you don't have to. And believe me, it's a hell of a lot more fun. It's a hell of a lot more kind and compassionate and giving and cooperative on the side that doesn't believe that every other human being is an evil asshole that's supporting a system that violates our mothers, it's better on this side of the chasm. And again, as social interaction becomes more and more pushed by necessity, more and more online, I think being able to create communities that are truly supportive and truly kind and caring and compassionate will become a very valuable resource. So, and I think it'll be very competitive, which is what they're talking about. They're talking about these startup societies competing and being effective. And the other thing that I would add to that is a lot of people feel despair when they think about the recognition of men's issues because they want the greater society to recognize them. But maybe the real answer is to create a society that recognizes them and see how well it competes with future conditions, because we're seeing the future conditions. Future conditions is everyone's being pushed online. Eventually, people are going to realize that if all of your social interaction is being pushed online, the online communities that you're a part of are extremely important for supporting your productivity and supporting your mental health. And they're going to realize that the ones they want to be a part of are those ones that do so, that don't tear each other down, that don't create these systems of incredibly difficult to abide by rules of what you can say, what you can do, what you can express, that these are actually stultifying and just toxic communities. But at the same time, it's also very difficult to find a sense of community in a server in which everyone's trolling everyone else. Everyone's trying to get a rise out of everyone else. So to find the balance is going to become something very valuable. And okay, Brian, you have
Yeah.
listened so patiently to me, and everybody else has listened so patiently to me. So let's do you want to get some more in?
I got some super chats here, so I should probably catch up
Okay.
on these. All right, so Dragon Noodle Soup Gaming gives us $5 and says, also donate at Feed the Badger, where you can support your favorite badgers like Allison and Karen. Thank you, Dragon Noodle Soup Gaming.
Okay, I just want to say that the best way to support Karen is to go to her channel and support through her PayPal link.
Yeah.
Yeah, the like you can support Karen specifically through Feed the Badger, but it goes to her directly and more completely if you go to her channel and support through the PayPal link. If you support us through subscription, you're actually supporting the show itself, which is separate from Karen, and also the community. All right.
Okay.
Continue.
Yep. The Great Indoors 1979 gave us €10, and this is the one that ended up playing the audio that you didn't hear, so I'll just read it out. This is possibly a more philosophical comment, but it dawned on me that the virus made society go from a toxic masculinity narrative to a toxic humanity one. Keep that 5-foot distance, please.
Yeah. Now everybody is under creep rules.
Yeah, I guess so. I was gonna say that there is some truth to that, but I see a lot of people doing a lot for each other. Lindsay had to run out today and get some patching because she's like working on some projects since she doesn't have a job right now, and she wants to keep busy. And so she needed to patch some holes in the bedroom because we were supposed to be painting the apartment, and we got about halfway done in that we painted like the living room and the dining room completely. And I want to say, yeah, that was basically as far as we got, but we also had paint for the bedroom and the kitchen, and we just hadn't gotten around to those spaces. And so she decided she was going to do that since she doesn't have a job. And while she was out today picking up the patching, she was on her way back home, and there was a bus she had just missed. So it was basically like about to pass her stop as she was leaving, sort of like coming around the corner or leaving the shop. Is that? And so she tried to wave the guy down, and typically that's futile because the buses just go. But this guy stopped for her and let her get on, even though she, basically he had to wait for her. And I know that some of you guys maybe that live in smaller towns think that that's sort of more normal, but in like a city as big as Chicago, or other really large cities where the buses run relatively regularly, and it's not like you're not going to see another one for like 10 minutes or 20 minutes at the most. They don't typically stop, so this one did. I do see in actually an increased amount of humanity, and even though people are keeping physical distance and everything, but I think that they are a lot more aware of, I guess, like they are more aware of each other, if that makes any sense. I'm not really sure if I'm explaining it right, but despite the social distancing, there seems to be an increased sense of community that I've observed anyway. So,
Mm-hmm.
all right, but anyway,
Yeah, I was actually talking to Tiny Giraffe, who we'll be bringing on a little bit later. She was talking about how she felt like people were um, either falling into one of two categories. But I
hmm
said that maybe what's happening is that we're seeing the extremes as opposed to just the general average person's response, which might be very responsible.
yeah,
But yeah.
yeah. Okay, so Polaris 589 gives us $5 and says, since we are watching libertarian videos, put on some Dave Smith. I'll look into it. I don't know if we'll be doing that today, but Dragon Noodle Soup Gaming gives us $2 and says, care about your handmaidens? Feed the badger. Thank you, Dragon Noodle Soup.
Yep, you can feed the badger and become a patron. It's $5 a month to get access to that Discord, and it is a lot of content. It is a fire hose of love, as I've put it several times. So that's feedthebadger.com and get a subscription and join us. Become a badger, become part of the badger community.
Mm-hmm. That Reeve guy gives us 50 kronas and says, government, you have to practice social distancing. Me, a hermit and introvert, I have trained for this moment for most of my life. The Great Indoors 1979 gives us €5 and says, so what you're saying is we need to become the Bork and Karen needs to become the Bork Queen. Borks that's a doggo thing, and Allison's talking about turning into badgers, so not quite. Dragonoodle Soup.
I don't know if badgers bork. I wonder if there's a cute
No.
thing that they just savagely growl.
Yeah, yeah. Dragon Noodle Soup Gaming gives us $2 and says, do we count as badgers? Are we furries now? It's up to you. But we do have furries in Discord though, but it's not all of us. The Great Indoors, the Great Indoors 1979 gives us €2 and says, hey Allison, do you remember the end of the ICMI 19?
Yeah, I think so. But what is specifically are you asking for? Like, I do remember that. It when I couldn't actually see anybody, so I didn't know when they were leaving. But I don't know what you're specifically referring to. Anyway, shall we bring Tiny on and she can
Yeah,
talk about her ideas?
sure. You can
Uh,
bring Tiny on. She's
okay,
here.
Tiny. Yeah, she's here.
She's muted
Tiny, if you
though.
want to unmute, you
Oh,
can.
sorry, I
Oh,
was
that's
closing my
okay.
door.
Yeah. So you had a really great idea. Why don't you describe it and just take your
I wouldn't
time.
call it a great idea.
Just take deep breaths. But remember to give the preamble.
All right.
As opposed to just diving right in. Okay, go ahead.
I'm not an expert on China or manufacturing. This is just something I've been thinking about while reading basically everything I can get my hands on. So there's a company here that makes biscuits in Australia. And during the crisis, they're saying, we're fine making food. We have all the ingredients here. It's all produced in Australia. But there might be a shortage because we can't get the plastic trays and the printed packaging that we get made in China while the borders are shut down. And that's true for basically every industry here. There's always some integral piece of machinery, some packaging, something that is made only in China in large volumes that we can't do without. It's in, let's say, masks that have been in a shortage that we can't produce ourselves, that we're in a lot of danger without. We
Yeah, so stuff that's just a little bit it's difficult to find in your local area because it's reliant on the global system, even though technically it's something that you should be able to get. So I mean, biscuit boxes are, that's I mean, that's something Australia could make. It's not like rare earth metals or some
Mm-hmm.
kind of widget that only Germany knows exactly how to produce. So you had an idea of how to kind of deal with these local shortages when the global system is, unavailable, or maybe even going forward. So why don't you talk about that?
Well,
Are you okay?
yeah. Oh, can you hear me?
Yeah,
Yeah.
we can hear you.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Essentially, I'd like to diversify. We all know that small businesses are way more flexible. They're able to change up what products they're producing, try new things, and they don't have this enormous infrastructure that they need to produce the high volumes that China does. Um, so we have here, uh, say, 3D printing and CNC routers, which can do rapid prototyping, that can knock out products within weeks from design to small scale production. That's something any country can do with um, just say a warehouse. They can retrofit it with these machines and produce small scale manufacturing.
Yeah. So
They,
essentially just create like a distributed manufacturing nodes that can actually manufacture, like they don't focus on volume, they focus on diversity of things that they can manufacture. So sort of what you're
exactly.
thinking. Yeah, so if there
Yeah,
is a shortage, they can supply that particular thing as opposed to something else. And certainly packaging, if you've ever seen a CNC working, you could probably just put some cardboard down and cut out packaging. And that CNC machine could
absolutely.
also create uh, shelves and even the blueprints for like furniture. There's a lot of potential uses for certain types of manufacturing, like, and you were talking about like 3D printing, CNC machines, laser cutters. They can create a lot of custom stuff rapidly, and it's smaller scale, but it's something that could actually, when you're looking at a global system that's no longer operating, as it were, it can sort of even out those
Trying to
slumps
Hold
in
figure
on.
out
production.
how bad
Sorry,
things are in different
another
areas.
super
God.
New
chat.
York and large
Speaking of
cities
the
Hold on.
slump
are
in production.
taking it hard while the shutdowns are the main things felt in the South.
Okay, go ahead now.
All right. Sorry. It's almost like these are bombs being dropped on the show. Okay. So what I was essentially saying is that you could focus on creating little smaller productive production facilities that focus on diversity as opposed to volume. And that could be a way of shock proofing your economy, if that makes sense. And the other thing with like a smaller facility is they can actually be run by smaller groups of people. So you might actually reduce the spread of any kind of contagion too. Um, if you're careful about that. So I think it's
Yeah,
a really great idea. And I thought that when you told me about it, I thought it was really insightful and interesting. So I mean, maybe going forward in the future, what we'll be seeing is the neighborhood factory, which is just like one smaller size building with a whole bunch of different types of um of machinery that isn't specialized necessarily, but can create a variety of things that then can be assembled. And maybe that's the way we'll get products in the future. That would be really interesting. Seems like it would definitely like in terms of reducing the shock to the distribution systems, it would take a lot of the load off if we started to become more localized like that in terms of our production. So so that's why I thought I would bring Tiny Giraffe on to talk
Yeah.
about her idea. And of course, she's adorable. She always
Well,
adds to the cuteness quotient.
yeah,
thanks
She
it,
for
comes on.
listening to my rambling, by the way.
That's it was great. Um I'm gonna put you back in Direhawk's den. You can go chill with the others and maybe get some sleep because you're what is it, like 4 in the morning?
It's 7 a.m. and I've been
7
awake
a.m.
since midnight.
Oh
Aw.
my
Well,
goodness.
go get yourself some sleep.
Yeah,
Go cuddle your
I
cat.
shall do.
Yes. So thank you again, Tiny. I'll talk to you next time. All right, so we're back. Do you want to take the super chats?
Yeah, so I got a couple super chats, one of which played while you were talking. Dragon Noodle Soup Gaming gave us $10. This is the one that played out loud. Trying to figure out how bad things are in different areas. New York and large cities are taking it hard, while the shutdowns are the main things felt in the South. Yeah, it's hard to say. I would suggest, here's some things I would suggest. I don't believe the mainstream media. I also don't believe like people in
We're gonna have another incoming
personally,
bomb.
I don't.
Stop
Yeah.
manufacturing in China until they no longer have an authoritarian
I
regime
can't hear it all, but I
controlling.
see
It's
it.
playing right now.
Manufacturing in China was always something of a poison pill anyway.
Yeah, I agree with that, Eric Hopper. I'll read that one in a second. All right, so yeah, I don't believe generally what the media says because they have their own interests as well as politicians. I would just look at like, I mean, it's not much that we can go off of based on that, but I generally look at what, you know, maybe some more trustworthy media sources have to say, try to listen to a lot of different things, come to your own conclusions, and remain chill. Dragon Noodle Soup Gaming gives us $2 and says, I recommend gardening during these trying times. Well, it's still a little cold here, but I think that's a good idea.
Oh yeah, we're gonna be getting we're probably going to plant a big garden.
Yeah,
Lots of potatoes and spaghetti squash.
gotta have that. Potatoes.
Spaghetti squash is delicious.
I want sweet potatoes so bad right now. Yeah. Eric Hopper gives us $10 and says, stop manufacturing in China until they no longer have an authoritarian regime controlling. Manufacturing in China was always something of a poison pill anyway. Yeah, I have a feeling that our relationship with China in terms of mass manufacturing is going to change dramatically. I already know that a lot of manufacturing is already starting to sort of crop up in the United States, since the normal channels we go through, not just China but other countries out there like Taiwan, we're not we're not able to get stuff from them. So because people still need things, I think that there's we're going to see a return to manufacturing in the States and probably a lot of other Western countries. Which is good because the men here need work too. So there you go. All right. So the Great Indoors 1979 gives us €5 and says, I was referring to the incredible sense of community I felt in that room at the ICMI 19, Alison. Oh, all right, cool.
Well, that's really awesome. Unfortunately, I wasn't there, so.
I think that's what he was joking about that.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate it.
Got trolled.
I got messed with. Yeah. Okay.
Took the bait. All right. So anyway, that's it for the super chats. What do you want to do now?
Okay. Well, Richard was saying that he would like to come on and talk about something, so maybe I'll bring him on.
All right. Go ahead.
Hi, Richard.
Hello.
What's up, Richard?
Okay. So I know you've been wanting to say something since last week, so why don't you take this opportunity to do so?
What's it about the thought apocalypse that Brian was talking about?
The thought apocalypse?
The thought apocalypse?
Yeah.
Yeah. The thought economy. The thought economy bubble has burst. Yes.
Yeah. But they're ever evolving, Brian. They're ever evolving.
What happened?
They're offering like internet girlfriend experiences now. So for the most part.
Oh my god. Really? They're offering internet girlfriend experiences. Okay.
Yeah,
well,
so they have different levels.
Yeah.
And different packages.
Yeah.
So for like a certain amount of money, they all text you and stuff like that, and they go on like those cam sites and stuff.
Yeah, sure.
And set up shows and stuff like that. So the thought evolves and adapts. So it's like the virus, Brian. It's like the virus.
Well, okay. I will say that if I can't blame them for being very savvy business people in terms of how they use their talent or lack thereof to get money. And I can't really tell the men that give them money that they shouldn't do it because it's your money. You do what you want with it. But I still think they're not going to really be able to make it up to that degree because as the average man or young man is, as he's losing hours, he's not going to have as much free money. And unless he's like so lonely and he's willing to throw away everything he's got just to like have a virtual girlfriend, which is.
Have you noticed on?
Go ahead.
Sorry. Have you noticed the whole I'm an independent woman tweets have gone down now?
Yeah, of course. Oh yeah, no, for sure. That's that. There, no.
I was actually thinking about that.
There's none of that's going on. None of that's going on.
All the prostitutes on Twitter are saying that they don't need a ban. They're like begging for their clients to step up now.
Yeah, of course. Not only that, but some of them have been. There was a story I read where strippers that no longer have work have started delivering
food.
Yeah, they're delivering food. It's called Boober Eats. And they got like strippers that are out of work delivering food. So I mean, it's either that or you learn to code. So
some fools I follow on Twitter have stopped all the independent woman crap and saying I need clients to step up.
Yeah. Well, again, one would hope that men would see that and not step up, but this is
it's gonna happen.
There's a sucker born every minute, so.
Yeah, well, I mean, the thing is that if people want to be part of that, that's their decision. I know that there's some individuals who do choose the route of well, I think
Alison.
There must be something to be said for choosing sex workers who actually have compassion for men or concern for their issues.
They're few and far between. So
yeah, I can imagine they're few and far between. But maybe be on the lookout for that and try to avoid the ones that are really noxious unless you're into that.
I mean, Anna Cherry is cool, but she's like
I one in 1,000. So
yeah, probably.
Yeah. Well, maybe it is times of economic hardship. Increase the expectations from your sex workers. Maybe expect them to actually.
That's not going to happen because
reasonable.
they don't like to be criticized. So.
Well, yeah, no women do, to be honest.
No,
I don't even like
well, that's what I'm saying. Like,
tolerate it.
Because if you follow sex worker Twitter, most of them like criticize people for leaving reviews.
Yeah, sure. Well, remember, there's always Project Melody, and so y'all can just go spend time with that virtual girl, and there'll probably be other virtual girls that will crop up in this trying time.
And the sex robots will wise again.
Yes. Oh, something else I thought about as an aside. If there's any point at which the whole like VR community thing could like blow up, it's now. That's like the time that would happen, right?
Yeah.
If that becomes a thing, this would be the time.
You can't find like an Oculus Rift S really. Like they're getting sold out.
Oh yeah.
Really rapidly. Yeah. Like all of the VR sets are getting sold out.
I can't use VR anyway.
Oh, because of your eyes or
epilepsy?
Oh, I see. Yeah, because it's got that refresh rate. I know that personally there are some VR games that I can't play because they make me nauseous. It might be a similar situation, but to just irritate your eyes or they tire your eyes. I apologize. My cat is just going nuts.
I can barely hear it. It's fine.
Okay.
I got another text today from the NHS saying that I need to stay in the house for another couple of months. So.
Well, just be sure to pop in on the voice chat when you feel lonely. Speaking of which, thank you for coming on, Richard. I'm going to move you back into Firehawk's Den.
Yep. Bye, Richard.
Thank you for your thoughts. Thank you for your thoughts.
Yeah, thanks for your thoughts on thoughts.
Okay. So do we have any more super chats? Because we could just, I think,
nope.
Call it at the hour.
No more super chats. We're good.
Because my cat is driving me nuts. All right. So thank you guys for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed this episode of Badger Town Hall and Comfy Booster, and it did indeed boost your comfort. There's lots of things to think about besides society liquidating. We could think about all of the things that might crop up because we have to do things differently. We have to start reconsidering our approaches to things, like our approaches to gender. For example, a lot of the women who are tweeting out all of those "I'm a strong, independent woman," I think they're
Mm-hmm.
reconsidering their approach right
Absolutely.
now.
Yeah.
I'm reconsidering, like, you know, my husband has never been like not a stockbroker or like a high powered lawyer or anything like that. You certainly know Christian Grey. We've been reading 50 Shades of Grey, and as one of the patron streams, just having fun with it. Well, taking the piss out of it mostly.
Yeah.
And because I actually find that book hilarious because of her complete lack of self-awareness. She has these two guys, well, actually three, but in the first two chapters, two guys that are actually described. One man is named Jose, and of course he's like the sexy, well, Latino stereotype, who's also a photographer, but he has no money. And she's like pondering, why do I find Christian Grey? I mean, Jose is really attractive, but why do I find Christian so much more attractive? It's like because he rubs himself down in money. Like he like he's rich. That's
Mm-hmm.
why. And it's like a complete lack of self-awareness. And I just find it hilarious. But anyway, we've been reading that and it's been great. And oh, right. Yeah. But when you realize that you're with a man who can actually shoot a gun, you know, field dress a deer and have a bumper crop of spaghetti squash, you know, it starts to the value system of making a lot of money starts to go away. And I think a lot of women are going to start to reconsider that kind of stuff too. When if the financial system does continue to go into free fall,
Yeah.
and you know, and a lot of guys, and even it does, you know what, and ultimately at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter that much what women decide. Also be nice for those guys who are facing a loss of their sense of self, because a lot of men pin their identities on the social approval they get from making money, and a lot of it, and what we're looking at is the loss of trillions upon trillions of dollars, and a loss of livelihoods and a loss of a sense of purpose and self for a lot of these guys. Um, I hope that they're able to see themselves in a new light before they do something drastic as well. And that actually is more important to me than all the formerly independent, strong independent women are suddenly realizing that maybe I could use a man in my life in these trying times.
Yeah. Oh no, they're definitely doing that. They're definitely doing that. And a lot of them don't, you know, one of the reasons why they get frustrated is I noticed that when that happens, they don't even know what like what entails finding a man. So they just demand that there be a man around. Like they don't even know about, you know, like I wouldn't even call it the game, but they don't know like how this sort of normal organic human connection works. So they're just like, where's a man? I need a man right now. What's going on? You know, this is just foreign to me. I don't understand what's happening. And I think they're gonna be forced to adapt and learn. So, and it'll be good. It'll be good for them. Character building
Ah,
experience, and
oh yeah, it's definitely
humbling.
gonna be apparent. I can imagine how humbling it must be. And I think that there's going to be a lot less of a tolerance for
Yep.
weakness in women and affectations of weakness. So the feminists may have to nut up, as it were,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
um, and stop trying to sell victimhood and weakness. But so we have some additional super chats, and I see
Yeah.
Tyler once again. You know, Tyler, where are you sending these Streamlab comments?
Yeah,
Because
I'm
I
curious because
can't find them anywhere.
I'm in the Honey Badger radio Streamlabs, unless you're putting it into the Badger live streams
I can
Streamlabs.
check.
But I'm in the Honey because this video we're streaming right now is on Honey Badger Radio. So I'm looking at that Streamlabs, but I'm not looking at the Badger live streams one. through the description under Twitch. Oh, so he might be watching this on Twitch. I don't know where that is.
Okay, let me see. Maybe I screwed that up and you're actually sending it to a random thought.
Okay. Well,
That
hopefully
would be
not.
hilarious.
I'll read this other super chat from that Reeve guy while you find that. That Reeve guy gives us 50 kronas and says, money only has value if you can trade it for actual goods and services anyway. Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, I don't think we're receiving that. That's
yeah.
really odd.
Have you been on the Badger live streams thing too? What's in the
Yeah,
Twitch
I'm on
description? I'm just curious
Oh, it's
about
just
that now.
Swashberry, like from a couple of weeks ago. So this is the one that you need to send to. I'm really sorry about that, Tyler. I don't think we're receiving it. I don't know what we're receiving it through. I guess I'll go to Twitch and see if it says.
Yeah, that's kind of strange.
That is kind of strange.
So he did summarize it here. He said his comment was about how stupid people are justifying the government forcing everyone in their homes by saying, quote, safety and protection is much more important than freedom, end quote. Yeah, well, I mean, there's one way you can get people to give up their freedoms, and it's to scare them.
Oh, I think I might have figured it out. Let me just double check here. Yes. Okay, so you sent $1 through the tip. No, that it doesn't have a note.
Oh, that's
so
strange. It's probably
yeah,
because he didn't give enough. Because I think that if you for a lot of places that take sort of super chats, you have to like give a minimum dollar amount, and sometimes, and YouTube at least is notorious for this. If you give a super chat, you have to at least give $2 before you can actually type a message. But there are people who try to send us super chats of less than $2, and sometimes it's just like $1.99, and we'll get like $1.99 or $1, and there'll be no message attached to it, even if the person typed a message out. It'll just put the money in. So that might be it might be because of that.
Let me fix this up, and it'll probably take you to the donation link, but you might have to actually donate something more than $1. Okay, yeah. It goes to badgerlivestreams.com. I think you have to do the donations option, Tyler. Okay, this is probably like this is just technical difficulties.
Yeah,
with our monetary
I know
system.
we're just dealing with stuff. Is there nothing else then? I should wrap this up.
Yeah,
I've read all the super
up.
chats. All right, so
I can do you get once again, if you want to become part of the community, go to feedthebadger.com, become a badger by getting a subscription, getting in the Discord, having some fun with us and with the rest of the people in the Discord. And they are fun people. They are very fun people. That's once again feedthebadger.com. So go ahead, Brian.
All right. So after I'm done talking here, I'm going to play the outro, Alison. So if you could just silent while it's playing.
Silent.
Yes.
Are you telling a strong, independent woman what to do? You misogyn nerd.
So if you guys enjoy this video, please smash like chan. Please subscribe to the channel if you're not already subscribed. Hit the bell for notifications. Also be sure to subscribe over at Badger Livestreams, where most of the videos go up. I know that HBR has a much bigger set of subscribers than Badger Livestreams does. So if you're one of those people and you would like, maybe you should go back over to Badger Livestreams, because there's some good content that lives there that we put up every day. So smash like, subscribe if you're not already subscribed, hit the bell for notifications, and leave us a comment. With that said, thanks guys for coming on this episode of the Comfy Stream. It's Comfy Stream, right? Called? And
yeah, sure.
Yeah, okay. And
is that comfy?
Yeah, that's fine. It's pretty comfy now. It was kind of cold. Oh, okay.
You need a quilt. You need to get a quilt. Yeah. You need to wrap yourself up in a quilt with some hot chocolate.
Good. That sounds pretty good. And I've been craving sweet potatoes. But anyway. Can
you make good beverage out of sweet potatoes? A hot beverage out of sweet potatoes?
No. There's probably some way to do something with like potato flavor or something. I don't know. Okay, so anyway, with that said, thanks guys for coming on this episode of the Comfy Stream, and we'll talk to you guys.
There is a sweet potato latte in Korea.
Of course there is. And we'll talk to you
We have
guys
everything.
in the next one.
Men's right activists are machines, dude. Okay? They are literal machines. They are talking point machines. They are impossible to fucking deal with, especially if you have like a couple dudes who have good memory on top of that too. Holy shit, you're fucked.